Live exports, yeah, I mean, it's again an issue I worked on for a long time. To get on board this livestock vessel, which was Australian animals traveling to Bahrain in the Middle East, I had to pose as the owners of the sheep, which took a few days to get into the port based on that strategy. But it got me access to the boat because the crew were none the wiser. And spent a few days there documenting the whole process until the real owners turned up, and then things got a little bit hot after that. No, we're the owners. No, we're the owners. It's a bit Monty Python stuff going on there. Highs and lows, personal impacts. Yeah, like I said earlier, it's very tough to just day in, day out for a long period of time document animal cruelty and be a bystander at times. When I was working in some places, and if I had the chance, I'd make sure I'd get water to animals or feed to them if they didn't have it. But those moments were sadly quite rare. I was, however, able to pass information on to others who could undertake other sort of projects relating to like rescues and stuff. So it's part of a process, but it's not easy. There's a lot of animal suffering that I've seen, and it hangs over you, I would say. I don't know if any of you saw Okja, the film on Netflix a couple of years ago. It might be worth you looking into it. But that was when I saw that film, that was like, okay, I can stop this stuff, because it's this kind of story and this kind of work was sort of being shown on the main, the big screen. Had a big pickup, triggered a lot of people to look a bit more closely at their lifestyles and what they choose to eat and don't eat. And when you see that in the mainstream, you kind of think, things are changing, and the next wave of people are coming through to take your place. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I've kind of decided to move on a little bit. The police. Everyone's often worried about the police, and most of the time you probably should be, but I've actually had some occasions where the police have been actually really great. I was caught in a fur farm. I won't say in which country, but it wasn't the UK, and it was just over the channel, a couple of countries across, and I had a lot of evidence from like half of the fur farms in that country. And I was working with someone else, and fortunately, nothing, it was like I say trespass, but the farm personnel found us and started to take us out on it. So the best thing to do was actually call the police to help you out of that situation with them. And I was held in custody, for quite some time. But the police were two young officers. They detained me and my colleague and put us in different rooms, and they were waiting for a public prosecutor to come in and interview us. But the young guys who caught us, they opened the windows so that we could each hear each other's statements. And I think, they were pretty on side. And also, they found some equipment. Normally, I hide everything, all your footage and tapes and stuff, you find hiding places for it. So I used to use the air filter, take that out of a car, and then I'd stash everything inside the air filter. So if you get pulled up by people, they go through your car and stuff. They don't tend to look in there, so that's kind of safe. But I did lose some footage. I did put some material in a field before. This is kind of a complex, convoluted story, so perhaps I shouldn't keep it going for too long. But the long and short of it is, the young cops were great. They didn't want to see us prosecuted anyway. They took us out the back door, and they were definitely, gave us a wink and, put us on our way, and that's great. Escaped that day, yeah. And I was going to say there was a couple of other anecdotes I was going to mention just before we do some Q&As. I was saying earlier about the camera and being paranoid about someone spotting it. I did a big project on reindeer and commercial slaughterhouses in the Arctic, in the sort of very north of Scandinavia. And this surprised a lot of people, but you know, the Sami traditions of reindeer herding have moved on a lot from traditions, and, you know, big double-tiered, you know, livestock trucks are collecting the reindeers and taking them into, you know, commercial slaughterhouses that look just like our slaughterhouses for pigs, and, you know, 400 or 500 going through a day. And I managed to film in some of those places, but at one place, like I said, I'm quite a short fella, I was having to like try and raise myself up to an area that I could like document down into. So my body was kind of like looking a little bit odd, and the guy said to me, "Are you wearing a camera?" And I was like, no, I'm not. He said, "You are, aren't you?" And I was like, no. So I started undoing my buttons. It was like the worst strip act ever, you know. It was like taking 1 down, 2 down, 3 down. It was at the 4th one, and at 3 he said, "I'm really sorry. No, stop. And the next one was my camera. And getting sort of like that happen in like a place where there's like, you know, big burly people all around and really horrible cutting tools and blood everywhere, it's just, you just kind of gets your heart racing a little bit. But there haven't been too many moments like that. And like I said, I've been tried to be very, very careful. So just to finish off before we do some quick questions, I'm still campaigning. I did the veganuary campaign last year, but instead of documenting animals, I'm now rescuing them. And I've got a little micro sanctuary down in Cornwall with like 17 animal rescues, hens, ducks from factory farms and slaughterhouses, and cats and dogs from other situations. So it gives me really great pleasure, you know, watching these animals and documenting their life in a different way than, you know, the previous work. But it's good to know there's others following through. And it's good to know that there's groups like Animal Aid who are, you know, making this work, you know, 7 new undercover investigations this year. It's about 2018. You know, it's a part of their DNA. And it's so important that we keep doing this and releasing this material to the public because it is impactful and it is creating change. And hopefully soon we won't have to do it. So thank you, Animal Aid, for inviting me. I hope you had a good evening, and I'm just going to take a few questions. Yeah, at the back.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your excellent presentation, all the work you're doing on behalf of Animals for Us All. I'm curious about 2 things. First of all, your training. You talked about being an investigative journalist, I believe.
Yeah.
And also the funding and how funding comes through to you, because clearly it's a job as well.
Yeah. Well, I've never, like I said, I've tried to avoid taking actual paid jobs in factory farms or slaughterhouses. So I've tried to find other ways in to tell those stories. So I've never had to like be paid by them in any way, which is great. The organisations that I've worked for, you know, have supported me, you know, during those projects, so that, you know, I have been able to survive by doing it. So the investigative journalist was actually something that I got halfway through doing this work because of all the evidence that I've been able to get. And it also helped me join, like, you know, the union, National Union of Journalists, who, you know, can be really actually very helpful. I would say I really trod the line on journalism, you know, on probably the code of ethics. I didn't represent it probably to the way that journalists would like to work. But I think, you know, there wasn't any other choice really, you know, to tell these stories. You have to tread a very tight line. And like I said, I've tried to minimize breaking the law as much as I can and only really look for those moments. I've never broken and entered anything. You know, I just wouldn't do that. It's trying to be smarter, you know, than your adversaries, I guess, to try and different ways in to tell that story without impacting yourself or also the organisation that you're working for, because you don't want to get them in hot water for anything either.
So it's like a project brief, is it, that's given to you, or you decide and then approach a relevant organisation and they give funding?
Yeah, generally a lot of organisations, sort of animal aid side or otherwise, you know, part of their income is going, part of it's going into their investigative projects as part of their campaigns funding. And then, they would approach someone like me, say, well, look, we've got this marker coming up on the horizon. We've got a chance maybe where we can, get CCTV in slaughterhouses. Let's work backwards, and then I would help them, try to actually, undertake that project for them, and then go through the process of getting everything that they need as part of that project to change the law. So that's how it would start. Yeah, a project brief, and then, a period of time to undertake the projects.
Could you give us an idea of how much CCTV there is around the world nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit. Yeah, I think it's moving more steadily across Europe than further afield. So I think France has introduced some of it now. Yeah, and Malta. Yeah, so as you would perhaps expect, it's close neighbours of the UK, maybe you would then start to see the first changes, and then generally things tend to percolate a little bit later on, the States or Asia may not at all, but yeah, I mean, that was one example, but I guess, there's others. I mean, certainly, I would say the UK was really one of the leaders in activists, really making full use of undercover investigations for animal organisations. And, in more recent years, as animal rights organisations have grown up in new countries, from just nowhere, they've not even gone through an animal welfare sort of period, they just jumped straight into animal rights. They want to learn from those that have been through it, and I think that's just makes total sense. Obviously, culturally, there are going to be differences, but, passing on that knowledge to others, like I was saying, like in the Ukraine, it gives them a start, and, they'll work it out themselves, But yeah, it's good to see a lot of these things happening, via, the work like Animal Aid have done, and, others that have made progress with undercover investigations as part of their campaigning work.
Did you meet plenty of other activists in the States?
Yeah, I mean, the States is undergoing a massive revolution as well, around plant-based foods, and, new groups springing up and becoming, very effective quite quickly in a short period of time. Maybe that's taken some of our organisations to be effective. They're making more progress. And actually, we often say we're the best for animal this and animal that, but, there are other countries that are definitely jumping ahead of us on the solutions side of things, the plant-based meats and etc. So, yeah.
Hi. When it comes to infiltration, how close do you sometimes have to come to being in situations where you're expected to harm animals directly yourself, and how easily can that be avoided, or how do you get around it? Yeah,
like I said, the cover stories I've tried to use tries to put a little bit of distance, a bit of a gap between me and them. So, I'm investing in a farm. I just need to know how it works. Or I would say fur trapping is probably the closest I got to it, because I was basically having to learn to become a fur trapper and make sets and cable snares and leg hold traps, and so I would set them. But I became known as the worst trapper in America, because I would go back at night and unset them or make something happen to trigger them or something like that. But
Canada goose.
Haven't done anything on that. I guess.
They maintain it's sustainable what they're doing. I just can't believe it is with the coyotes they catch. The amount of people I see in Hampstead, let alone the rest of the country, with a half an animal round their necks.
Yeah, coyotes are a big product from trapping. It's probably, depends on which state you're in, but the East Coast and the Midwest, probably coyotes are in the top 3 of animals trapped.
Yeah.
And
one more question, foie gras, have you done anything on that?
a little bit on that, yeah, but it's foie gras. Yeah, it used to be quite easy to document that, because yeah, traditionally, like in France, you know, you were able to visit, you know, the force feeding in the last couple of weeks, and it was, you know, in some cases it was like a tourist attraction. You didn't really have to work hard to go undercover.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you can visit foie gras farms and see that process. Obviously, less so now, but you know, for countries like Hungary, where there isn't that sort of tourist side of it, and it's more intensive and industrial, then it's a bit trickier to do. But I mean, certainly in France, group in France have done a lot of good work on it, L214, you know, with cage ducks, you know, kept in battery cages and force fed. But yeah.
Did you do laboratory work?
I've only done one assignment on laboratories, but it wasn't within the laboratories. It was the stage before that. So it was, it was in the Indian Ocean, Mauritius, where they, you know, capture wild monkeys and then put them into breeding places before their flights go out to all the labs all over the country. And interestingly, that one was really tough to get inside the front door. So I worked with like workers and taught them how to use cameras, and then I would collect the footage off them at the beach at the end of the night, and then train them again, restock their batteries, and you know, keep that kind of relationship going for a bit.
How efficient are the cameras in the slaughterhouses?
Sorry?
How efficient are the cameras in the slaughterhouses? Because I believe you can actually turn them off if that has happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anything, you know, everything has a switch. And yeah, I don't know whether maybe Izzy or someone from the Anime team may be better placed on giving you some advice on that, like in more recent years. But yeah, I mean, everything can be bypassed, but I guess there's a bit more enforcement that comes with that system, you know, through the government. That makes it harder for that process to be done. But yeah, you can break everything if you want to, you know. It's a layer, you know, it's a layer that we've got that makes it a bit harder for them to do what they're doing with you know, knowing that they're being watched. But you know, like all these things, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, animal groups incorporating investigations into their work, who can then go back and look, you know, create another investigation. You know, maybe, you know, we want to look at it again in 2-3 years, see how it really is working. You know, it's the animal organisations that are going to do that. We've put up a first sort of line of defence, but you know, we will go back and check. You know, we're always going to have to do that until we stop people eating what they eat.
I have another question. How do you stay sane?
Yeah.
Because what you do is just...
Yeah, well, I surf a lot, so I'm in the ocean quite a lot in Cornwall. I always find that's really good for, you know, getting past some of the things that you've seen. I'm quite pragmatic. I think, you know, I've learned as a campaigner over a long period of time, you know, the things that we're seeking to change, you know, aren't happening overnight. And, you know, there are going to be barriers that we have to get over. We need to celebrate the ones that we do get over, the ones that we bash into. We need to like regroup and think of a way of getting around it. So, yeah, it's sort of just being a bit pragmatic and seeing all the great changes that are happening. You know, just seeing the news every day. You know, there's lots to be happy about when we're seeing, you know, veganism on the rise and plant-based revolution, and so all those things we should, you know, look at as real positives and not, you know, deflect us and make us feel down from what still goes on. I mean, I should say to you that this might give you a little bit more hope, maybe. Some of the factory farmers that because I've maintained sort of distant relationships, I suppose, with them, you know, just to keep on top of what they do. Some of them are quitting, you know, like rabbit farms in Italy. You know, I've spoken to them subsequently, and they're saying, no, we're closing. You know, our kids don't want to take this on, you know, because a lot of factory farms get passed down to their kids in countries like that. You know, the kids don't want to do it because the kids are seeing, you know, at school, the other kids eating the vegan food. And, you know, they don't want to be part of what their parents are doing. So, you know, And then you see like big companies like, you know, Cargill and Tyson, you know, they're investing in all the stuff, the plant-based stuff that we want to see, because they know, they feel threatened by it, and they can see that it's going to become more of a mainstay of society. So, you know, when you see the factory farmers giving it up, and you see the companies making big moves like that, you know.
We owe you a lot, thank you.
Well, I think we should just, you know, we're all part of this together, and we all bring lots of little different skills together. And that's what I think is so good about our movement. You know, it's coming from the grassroots, and it's, you know, it manages to find people in the top places to support us, and, you know, everyone's doing little things, chipping away. It's brilliant.
I'm really moved to see your experiences in giving up your own personal life ambitions for this kind of projects. I come from a background where we've been vegetarians for so many thousands of years, and partly a lot of reason is that we got religious values in being vegetarian. Now, from a perspective of what I'm watching in the West, and the majority of the world is non-vegetarian. And since money, the politicians and the food industry are there together in this thing. But the question is, the religious people, the churches who are there to instill the values of compassion for everyone, do they actually help you in your work or not?
I would say
the Catholic Church is so powerful in the world, and really speaking, if they were able to exert some influence on their members, the changes would happen much more quickly.
Yeah.
So what are they doing when they see this kind of footage?
Yeah. I would say like traditions are like probably the hardest things to break when it comes to animals. And I guess, you know, when you look at the church, it's tied up a little bit with that as well. I would say that's probably going to be the area that I think is going to perhaps be the last to go. You know, traditional medicines and animals, traditional sacrificial events. You know, those are the things that maybe are going to take a little bit further to change. But there's definitely, you know, leaders in all kinds of communities and groups around the world. We just have to like tap into them a little bit more, give them a pedestal, so that they can, you know, spread that word out to their communities, and hopefully we'll see a bit more of that, you know, in the religious communities. Okay, I think it's probably time to wrap up, so I'll pass back to the Animal Way team.